For many of us, our parents loom large in our lives, shaping who we are and who we'd like to become. Journalist and author Wab Kinew knows this well. Like his father, Wab is a hereditary Anishinaabe chief, but also like his father, Wab has faced personal struggles along his journey to becoming a leader among Canada's First Nations. He's detailed this father-son relationship in his new book. It's called The Reason You Walk. And we welcome Wab Kinew to our studio. I can't believe I haven't met you before this.
Yeah, it's good to meet you.
Because we sort of travel in some of the same circles.
Yeah,
and,
we're in the
anyway,
media broadcasting world.
Yeah, it's great to have you in here finally. Let's start with a clip, shall we?
Sure.
I'm going to ask our control room to roll this, and then we'll come back and chat. If you would, please.
St. Mary's Indian Residential School opened in Kenora, Ontario in 1894. It was run by the Oblates until 1962 when it closed. My father, Tobasonakwut, was brought here by his parents when he was 7, and in an attempt to get rid of his Anishinaabe language and heritage, the priest who registered him renamed him.
And that's how I got that name, Peter Kelly.
Yeah.
And this is how I was registered. Then after that, I was given this number 54, which stayed with me all the years that I spent in residential school. And there were little guys there just like you.
My son is 5 years old now. He's the age kids were when they were taken away from their families. When I look at him and I see how frail he is, I wonder if he could take a beating from an adult like my dad did. I hear him cry for his mom sometimes, and I wonder if he could survive for 10 months without his parents.
For a doc you did for CBC Winnipeg, I guess it's 5 years ago now that you did that, you weren't born yet when the last of the residential schools was closed.
The last one's closed in 1997, so actually I was
you were?
a teenager.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me rephrase. I guess most of them had already been
Yeah,
closed
the
by the time.
heyday really concluded in the 1960s, 1970s.
But you're right, 97 was the last one.
So it's
Okay.
more recent.
So what new understanding do you hope to bring to the public through your efforts now?
Well, I think there's two main ones that I'd want Canadians to understand a little bit better. I think first and foremost, we often hear about the residential school story, and we understand that it's rightly so a story about pain and suffering and trauma. But watching my father, especially in the last year of his life, go on this remarkable journey of reconciliation and forgiveness of some of the people who are the modern day representatives of the institutions that harmed him, it also reminded me that the residential school story is not just about pain and trauma, it's also a story of inspiration, of people who overcame inhumanity, who experienced terrible things as children, and though it may have taken decades in some cases, in the case of my father, did eventually become fully formed human beings, did eventually become free and happy in their final days. So I think that's a powerful thing for people to understand, that this story of residential schools is not just about the negative. There's also some inspiration and some universal human traits that we can witness there. And I'd also want people to better understand the intergenerational impact of residential schools.
Can I pick up on that with a question? Because
Sure.
I hear, you tell me if this analogy is inappropriate, okay? I often hear, talking, for example, to African Americans who say, okay, slavery may have been outlawed back in the 1860s, but the fact is we still feel the burden of it all these years later because, and they will tell you why.
Right.
Is it the same story for residential schools for you? You may not have experienced it personally, but you still feel the impact of it?
Yeah, I think it's comparable, though, it's not exactly 100% similar. There are certain ways in which the political structures of the residential school era continue to exist in this country today. So the way that education on reserve is underfunded, the way that the child welfare system treats Aboriginal poverty as a sign of parental neglect, as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report tells us. Those are kind of a hangover policy-wise from the residential school era. What I'm talking about, though, more is, I think, the defects in my character as an individual today that I think bear, some connection to what happened in the residential school era. Well, I'm a person that wants to be, super dad. I want to be cultivating resiliency amongst my children. And even though I have that perfect image of fatherhood, when they're running around in the grocery store or Starbucks, I'm too quick to temper, too angry, too impatient.
Where do you think that comes from?
Well, I think it comes from the fact that my father was raised by priests and nuns, by people who didn't love him. Strict, harsh discipline. So his whole idea of how an adult should relate to a child was based on that.
Violence.
Right? Yeah, in some cases, violence. So when he raised me, how do you think he related to me? You know, he was not as severe. In no way I'm trying to say what I experienced is any way comparable to him. But he was very angry, and he was a harsh disciplinarian. And so now, today, when I'm a dad, I see too much of that reflected in my own behavior as a parent. And so to me, the intergenerational impact of residential schools that I want people to understand is that, you know, our family, we're not on the street, you know, we're not begging for money, we're not, you know, caught up in that sort of lifestyle or that sort of trap of poverty anymore. By and large, we've become successful and professional people, but we're still impacted in the way that we relate to one another. And that's something that I bear, because no government's going to come in and fix that for me. You know, no outside group's going to come in and fix that for me. That's me. That's on me to fix. You know, if I want to say that my children grow up free from the aftershocks of the residential school era, well, then I'm the one who's going to have to look into my heart and make myself a better person.
My hunch is you've already, well, let's put it this way. Did your dad take the belt to you at various times when you were growing up?
No.
Your dad never, did he hit you?
No.
He never did?
No.
Okay, and you've certainly never hit your kids?
No. Absolutely
right.
not.
Okay.
So we've made incremental progress, right? But what I'm saying is, I'm not trying to, because I know people are probably like, well, everyone's dad is stoic and, you know, a little distant and angry.
People of a certain generation, yes.
Yeah, right? The old school. But I'm not trying to use the average as a way to reassure myself that I'm okay. I'm trying to imagine what is possible, what perfection looks like, and I'm trying to use that as motivation to become a better dad.
You make a distinction here, and I'm curious about why that is. You know, in your book, you refer to your father as Tobasonakwut.
Yes.
Am I saying that correctly?
Tobasonakwut, yeah,
Okay.
very good.
But for his brothers, your uncles, you called them John and Fred Kelly. You do use the English names.
Yeah.
That I guess they got when they were at residential schools.
That's right.
How come?
Well, my father was very intentional about reclaiming his Anishinaabe identity as a way to separate himself from his experience in residential schools. So he legally changed his name back to his birth name, Tobasonakwut. And so that's why I call him that in the book.
Does that mean something?
Well, yeah, it's him reclaiming his original identity.
If you translate Tobasonakwut.
Oh, literally?
Yeah.
No, literally it means low-flying cloud in our language. And it's actually important to the arc of the book, so readers would be rewarded if they pay attention to that meaning. For my uncles, it was also important for them to reclaim their Anishinaabe identity. And so the surviving brother, Fred, today he calls himself Kije Bause Makwa in public, his Anishinaabe name, which means kind walking bear. But he has not gone so far as my father did to change his name. So I just respected, you know, their own journeys and how far they went on their respective paths and used the names that were commonly used by them.
Gotcha. Going to do an excerpt from your book here, because you write about being encouraged by your parents to share your culture with your schoolmates in Winnipeg, where you still live.
Right.
You do go on to say, however, having progressive parents didn't protect me from racism. I saw its ugly face at school and at the hockey rink. Quote, Indians are stupid, dirty Indian, and stupid effing boggin are some of the phrases that stand out. Part of the reason I hate the word Indian so much is because when I was growing up, I never heard it used without an ugly adjective before it. Dumb, drunk, dirty. Okay, anybody can get that. But you started a hip-hop group. What was the name of the hip-hop group?
Dead Indians.
Okay, so help me understand why you did that.
Well, I'm a person that's growing up and evolving. So what you're seeing written on the page there is where I am today and how I view things today. And when I started that rap group, that's where I was a decade ago or 15 years ago. And so at the time, I thought it was good to reclaim the term, in particular to reappropriate the words of a U.S. cavalry general who said the only good Indian is a dead Indian. And I wanted to take that back and take away the power of it by using it. But now I've evolved further, and now I just feel like, well, there's no sense, if it's a harmful term, there's no sense in using it at all. And let's just focus on the positive, and let's focus on being who we truly are. And so that's why in the book that I've written now, I don't call myself that term, I call myself Anishinaabe.
I've had so much advice on this. Let me get your advice as well. First Nations,
Yeah, the name question.
Aboriginal, Indigenous. What's the best way to go here?
Well, I think Indigenous is where the academy and the contemporary standards of politeness are headed towards. The other terms have specific legal definitions, right? So Aboriginal is a catch-all term for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. First Nations applies to status and non-status people who are descendant of Indigenous nations. The point that I would make more broadly is that this is all kind of part of this whole thing that's happened to Indigenous people over the past few hundred years, and that is that we are always being made into a race, right? First they want to make us into the red race, then the Indian race, then the Aboriginal race, and then soon the Indigenous race. But we're not a race. We're not a race of people. We are members of Indigenous nations. So I am Anishinaabe, and that's why I use the term in the book. Other people here in Southern Ontario may be Haudenosaunee or Delaware or Algonquin. Out west there'll be Nuu-chah-nulth and Kwakwaka'wakw. And I would encourage people, if they really want to get it right, then learn the names of our peoples. Yeah, that's right.
Good. Author Joseph Boyden, asked about whether Canada is still a racist country, had this to say. He said, absolutely. Yeah, of course we are. Let's put it this way. If you believe Canada is a post-racial society, you're probably white and you're probably male. Racism is alive and well, but we're much more polite racist than Americans. What do you think of that?
Well, I dispute that we're more polite. We're still dealing with sports teams in this country that have the R word as their title, which is a racial slur. In the dictionary, it's defined as offensive and disparaging for Native American people.
In case some people don't know what you're talking about, can I say it? And we'll,
if you bleep it. No, just kidding. I don't want to say it's okay.
You don't want to say it, but I'm assuming you're talking like Redskins.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like Washington Redskins in
the
NFL.
There's local teams in this country that still have that name as well. So I mean, the fact that there's still space in public to use a slur against Indigenous people. I know when I was growing up, I still heard the very ugly, very offensive, overt racism. Something happened in between the time that I was 4 feet tall and 6 feet tall where I stopped hearing that as much. But I still hear from my friends' kids that they hear it on ice at the hockey rink.
What do they hear?
Well, the same stuff that you just read in the excerpt from my book. Mainly the name calling. Oh, yeah.
Today at hockey games.
Yeah.
So it hasn't changed since you were a kid.
I think it's gotten better. Yeah, I think it's less acceptable in the public sphere, but it still exists. So there is still that kind of overt racism in public, but I think our country has changed. The mainstream, for the most part, I think, in spite of where they stand on various political issues, does want to have a better relationship with Indigenous people. I think there's broad support for that. But there still are systemic examples of racism, right? So the underfunding of First Nations schools, for instance. The unequal funding for child and family services, child welfare on reserve, and also the health care that is provided to First Nations people is different. Like I write in the book about how my father would have been eligible in Manitoba for cancer drug coverage, but because he was a First Nations man living in that province, he was not. Right? That's a systemic example of inequality that persists in this country today.
And he wasn't because his relationship is with a federal government that doesn't deal with this.
Yeah, it dates back to the Constitution.
Right.
You've got it.
Well, let me do one more follow-up on this issue of sports teams, because there is a heightened sensitivity, I think, about it nowadays, compared to certainly when you were growing up. I mean, no one thought twice about saying Washington Redskins back in the day.
Yeah.
They know now that it's not cool. Mm-hmm. How far do you want to go? Cleveland Indians, Atlanta Braves. Where do you want to draw the line? Edmonton Eskimos, for that matter, in the CFL.
Well, I think any Inuit person would tell you that the Edmonton name is not cool. I don't like the Cleveland name, obviously. But I don't necessarily think that we have to get rid of all of them. Like I know the Florida Seminoles have talked to that tribe and have got permission, which I guess we could debate the, minutia of. And like the Chicago Blackhawks, for instance. I'm all right with that. That's a specific historic figure. And if they use that as an opportunity to teach their fans about who Chief Blackhawk was and talked about this great leader, then I don't see a problem with that. So I think I'm a little more nuanced. I'm not like, get rid of all of it, but I do think that the offensive terms and the terms that, trivialize us and turn us into a caricature of ourselves, that's what needs to change, because those sorts of names make it okay to use that term on the playground, or they make it okay to show up at the school in a costume dressed up as an Indigenous person. Right. And those actions are very harmful to a potentially vulnerable or a young Indigenous person who's still trying to figure out their identity. And I want to get as much of that garbage out of the public sphere as possible.
Several times in the book, you do say that you come from a quote-unquote good family.
Right.
And yet, yours is a family that has experienced alcoholism, suicide, neglect, infidelity. Mm-hmm. It's not meant to be a judgmental question, but how is that a good family?
Well, it depends what you present. Like, if you present that definition of it, then maybe you might question that. But what is the other image of our family that's presented in the book? When my father received a terminal diagnosis of cancer, I put my professional career on hold to go be with him, as did my younger sister. She put her studies at Harvard on hold to come back and be with him.
So loyalty as well.
We spent the time and we fixed our relationship, and by the time my father left this world, he was my best friend. You know, everyone today, though we had earlier struggles, is educated, is a professional person. I've got 2 wonderful sons. My mom is a saint. I'm married to a beautiful medical doctor. So when you present that story, I do come from a good family.
Good. We started with a clip from your documentary from CBC Winnipeg, and I want to show another clip from that if we can right now. So, Michael, if you would, let's roll it.
It's my dad's cross.
Is it?
Yeah. Right there, that's where my dad's buried.
So were you, when they buried him, were you actually out here, standing around the grave?
I was over there.
My grandfather died after being hit by a car in 1947 and was buried in a cemetery at St. Mary's. My dad was allowed to attend the funeral, but an hour later he was called back to an assembly and beaten by a nun in front of his peers. His transgression? Standing beside his father's coffin, as is the Ojibwe custom, rather than kneeling like a good Catholic.
When she started beating me up, I resolved that I'm not going to cry. If that's your best shot, you don't know what I'm going through here and seeing my father being buried.
Yeah.
And this physical pain that I'm feeling, that's nothing compared to what I feel.
I do want to ask a follow-up question about your time around this time doing that documentary. It's actually a little bit before. Right. 2008, the federal government at the time is considering an apology from the federal government to the survivors of the Indian residential school system. And if I've got this right, the CBC at the time issued a directive to journalists covering that story. Mm-hmm. What was the directive?
Yeah, it was actually immediately leading up to the apology, so it was already clear the government was going to apologize to the residential school survivors. And it was an all-staff memo that said that in your coverage of this apology, you are not to use the term residential school survivor. And the rationale that they gave is because it's technically incorrect, and then they gave a dictionary definition of the term survivor. And it was very offensive to me on the one level because it's a very paternalistic attitude. They're telling my father, they're telling the Residential School Survivors Society, the Shubenacadie survivors, they're telling them, you don't know what happened to you. We are the experts, allow us to explain your story to you.
We'll decide how to define it.
Exactly, and ironically, it's the same kind of paternalistic thinking that characterized previous eras of relationships with Indigenous people.
How did you react to that directive when it came down?
Well, I reacted, with frustration and anger. I got on the phone right away and tried to talk to people about it. It became clear that wouldn't work, so I drafted a letter and I said, look, even using the dictionary definition of the term, it is accurate. Person, plant, or animal that survives a disaster which takes others of its kind. Like, you look at my father, his best friend died in residential school. Therefore, he survived the residential school. Like, it's an accurate term to be using. And initially, this was met with resistance by the higher-ups, the people who set the journalistic policy. But eventually, after a bunch of meetings and conference calls and behind-the-scenes machinations...
behind-the-scenes machinations, you threatened to quit, didn't you?
That's what kicked off the machinations, yeah. I said I would resign if the policy wasn't rescinded, and I fully intended to do so. I actually left work on the day that I made that threat. And
did your dad give you some advice in that regard?
He did, because we had sort of like the final moment, the big conference call where the matter was going to be decided, and I thought I was going to paint myself into the corner. and I had painted myself into a corner rather, and that I was going to have to follow through on the resignation. But what my father said is, what you're doing is right, and you're on the right side of this, and so it should be survivor. But I think it would be all right if you allowed them to use the other term, former student, as well. And the rationale that he told me is, he said, because you have to give, even if you're on the other side of the issue from these other people, you have to understand that they're still human. And they still have feelings and self-worth that needs to be considered, and you have to give them a way out that allows them to preserve their dignity. So you don't want them to look like they were completely wrong in the beginning. You want to give them a way to resolve this that allows them to save face.
That's very magnanimous of him.
And that's what happened the next day, is that they rescinded the earlier memo. They said survivors is fine, and they said, and guess what, former student is fine too. And full credit to my dad's wisdom. I didn't have to quit, I didn't resign, and I was okay with the decision as it ended up playing out.
Crisis averted.
Crisis averted, and so every time I got in trouble at CBC, I threatened to quit after that. No carrot muffins, I'm gonna quit.
Okay, Stephen Harper makes the apology on behalf of the Government of Canada,
Yep.
June 2008, and you quote part of what the PM said in your book,
Right.
and here's the quote. "The burden of this experience has been on your shoulders for far too long," the Prime Minister said in perhaps the most eloquent passage of the apology. "The burden is properly ours as a government and as a country. There is no place in Canada for the attitudes that inspired the Indian residential school system to ever prevail again. You have been working on recovering from this experience for a long time, and in a real sense, we are now joining you on this journey." That was the apology back in 2008. How well do you think Canada has done living up to its end of the obligations made by the Prime Minister back then?
I would say that Canadians, for the most part, have done a good job of living up to the apology. The Harper government did not. So I would make a distinction there. They pursued a legislative agenda which was very antagonistic, and they were rewarded by motivating Indigenous people to show up in the recent federal election and help vote their local candidates out of office. But broadly speaking, I do think that the residential school story offended the majority of Canadians. Most Canadians agree that the apology was the right thing to do. And I've seen evidence of that in the final meetings of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Vancouver, in Edmonton, in Ottawa, where tens of thousands of people, many of them non-Native people, came out to show solidarity with the survivors, but also to say, we want to be part of this conversation of how do we move forward, how do we fix things. And I see more evidence of that in the way that the educational system is being reformed in this province, across the West, and in other parts of Canada, how residential schools are being brought into the curriculum, how Indigenous knowledge is being brought into the curriculum, how a more inclusive view of Canadian history that celebrates Aboriginal people is brought into the curriculum. And I see it in the engagement that the mainstream has with Indigenous issues. Like, to be fair, Indigenous issues are still, it's not like we dominate the political discourse in this country, but we're now a part of it in a way that wasn't the case a generation ago.
You're certainly on the agenda in a way you weren't before.
That's right, and I think that that's a sign of progress, and it's a sign that most Canadians, even if they're struggling with how do I make a positive change, how am I a part of it, the intent is there. And so to me, I would say the average Canadian has, for the most part, tried to live up to the spirit of the apology.
You prepared to give Stephen Harper credit for making the apology?
Absolutely, 100%, because to be fair, like 100% honest, the two previous prime ministers to him were called on to make an apology to residential school survivors, and they did not. So yeah, he does deserve the credit for standing in the House of Commons and delivering that.
And having said that, I presume you're not disappointed to see the end of him either.
No, because as I was saying, he stood up and delivered the apology, which was a good thing. But then he followed that up with a series of actions that were aimed at denigrating Aboriginal and treaty rights, and which targeted our communities to have our political power lessened, to have our standing in the public sphere of this country ignored, if not demeaned.
Do you think Justin Trudeau will do better?
I think he's certainly got some good people around him, so I think he will. Jody Wilson-Raybould, one of his MPs from Vancouver-Granville, she's a force. He's got a record number of Indigenous MPs in his caucus. So I think he's got the potential, but again, Indigenous people have been promised the world before, dating back to the signing of the treaties. And you know, we're still waiting on many things to be delivered on. So I'm optimistic, but I'm also clear-eyed.
Optimistic and clear-eyed. That's a good way to be. Yeah. Let's finish up on this. Idle No More, which was very prominent for a particular period of time, and not so much anymore. In your view, what impact did it have?
I think Idle No More was another step on the journey. I think that this journey that I'm talking about Indigenous people stepping out into the public sphere of this country in a way that they haven't been before, it was really begun by the residential school survivors. 25 years ago, when Phil Fontaine stood up and told his personal story of abuse, when the Shubenacadie survivors told their stories, that helped to put it in the public sphere. Then more and more on the agenda as the apology and then the TRC. And that cleared the space for things like the Attawapiskat housing crisis to be discussed in this country. That cleared the way for Idle No More to take over the cover of newscasts and newspapers in this country. And then more recently with the you know, First Nations education and then the internal bickering in the AFN to be followed by the mainstream media. All of that space was cleared by the residential school survivors. So I pay homage to them first and foremost.
Have they run their course though?
No, absolutely not. We have a very sacred time in this country right now where we still have access to them. We still have access to people like a Phil Fontaine or a Robert Joseph, and we can hear their stories directly from them. And I think that we should, because I'm a big believer that not only do they have insight into a dark era of this country's past, they can also show us how a person can rise above that inhumanity and become a positive person, become a happy person, become a free person. And I think that that's inspiring. But returning to your question about Idle No More, I think that Idle No More, if I could simplify it, was Indigenous people motivated by a desire to protect culture, language, land, family, standing up and trying to get rid of Harper through protest. That failed. So 2 years later, they did the next best thing and they showed up at the ballot box. And in many ridings with high Indigenous population, it worked.
I wonder if I could impose upon you, in our remaining time here, to sing us a song.
Okay.
And this is an important song. This is a song you sang for your father, I gather, on the last day of his life.
Yeah. It's also,
tell us about it.
Yeah, this is called the Traveling Song, and we sing it at the end of every gathering, and after we prepared my father's body for cremation, we sang this song. But it's also where the title of the book comes from, The Reason You Walk, because the words to the song are the creator speaking to the person listening to the song saying, I am the reason you walk. And as it was explained to me, as you go through life, that reason becomes deeper and more fulfilled. Right? So, yeah, indulge me. Yeah, da, yeah, 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 hey, yeah, hey, yeah, hey, yeah, yeah, yo, hey, yo, ha, yeah, yeah, hey, yeah, da, yeah, yeah, yo, we, yeah, hey, yeah, 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 we, yeah, we, yeah, yo. Hey ya, yo, ho, hey yo, hey yo, hey yo. Hey go sha ne sha wenje be mo se yan ha ya hey ya ya we ya hey ya ho hey yo hey yo.
I'm so grateful you did that for us.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it, and it's so good to get to know you a little bit here.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
The Reason You Walk is the name of the book, via the University of Winnipeg. That's Wab Kinew. Thanks so much for visiting us at TVO tonight.
It's great to be here.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.